This is the Horse Radio Network.
This is episode 575 of the Dressage Radio Show, official podcast of the United States Dressage Federation on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products and Total Saddle Fit. On this week's episode, we are joined by author Andrea Waldo for our book club book, Brain Training for Riders. Then Meghan Brady is on again to tell us all about equine bodywork. After that, Reese and I will tackle a trainer tip about riding experienced schoolmasters.
This is Reese Stanfield from Georgetown, Kentucky.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show.
Hi, Phil. How are you this week?
I'm doing pretty good. You know, we're just in the groove. Every day is just like the last one, and it will be just like the next one. And hopefully nothing interrupts that flow that we've got going right now.
Exactly. No, it's so true. I'm still getting the days wrong.
Yeah, I noticed in your texts back and forth, between me and some other people, you're like, tomorrow we're gonna do this. And I'm like, no, you're not.
You're like, it's Wednesday, not Thursday. Yeah. So I don't know why. I mean, we're pretty rocking and rolling. I'm gonna blame it on the heat, not the environment. What's going on in the world. It's still very hot here, so I'm just gonna blame it on that and go with it.
Okay, that's fair enough. It's fair enough.
Yeah.
So what have you been up to? Tell me all about it.
Tell you all about it. I think a little lack of sleep because we're still, it's still kind of 93, 95 during the day. So we're getting up really early and getting the horses out and getting going. Yeah. So, so that's good, but cool. Everybody's good. Yeah. Scott Hassler, my coach, is coming in this weekend. We're going to do a very quiet, socially distanced, not clinic is too aggressive of a word,
some lessons.
But we have some lessons coming in. I'm really excited to have Scott come in. It feels really normal. It was 3 months since I saw him last time. So he was here about 3 or 4 weeks ago. So it's great. I've been really jazzed about my homework. Again, even professional riders, like we love our lessons just as much as everyone else, and keeps us trucking along. And, hopefully we have not heard yet about the U.S. Festival of Champions. So we'll see. Big Mike looks like he may make the list. So that is awesome. So it kind of gives me again, kind of slogging along. We're still trying to get that developing pre-St. George better and doing really well. So all is well down here.
Well, I started working with, at the farm, we have various ages of horses, and we have a 2-year-old. So I started kind of working with him, and that's, I wouldn't call that fun, but it's really interesting. You have to be a little bit careful because you're introducing them to everything, right? Yes. As far as, they don't get handled a whole lot. They live kind of in a run-in field where they're free to be horses and all that stuff. They come in to get the farrier every 6 weeks or 5-6 weeks or whatever, but that's basically it. So we brought him over to the working barn where the riding horses are. Yep. He came over there and kind of he's getting used to all that experience. So
it's all new and scary.
Yeah. He's really good. He's really cute. It's a Bellissimo quarterback.
Cool.
Gelding. He's a gelding. But,
how fun.
Got some good bloodlines, and anyways, we're just seeing how he deals with it. So
we kind of have a similar situation. Yeah, my assistant actually, some things just happened, and she was looking for a new horse, and my former assistant works at a wonderful charity called New Vocations, and she's the rider there. So Sarah and Dominique were talking, and Dominique got this horse in, and she called right away and said, "Sarah, you got to come look at this horse." So we also got a new project. He's a 5-year-old thoroughbred, which is really cool. He raced till he was 4, and then he'd already had a year out. And it's amazing that 4 to 5 year, how they mature. Like he's been great. Like he knew how to get on the trailer, and he's been perfect here at the farm. And actually today was the first day she sat on him. because at that particular charity, some of the thoroughbred charities are different. That particular charity, you don't sit on them. They have their own riders, and the riders, we happen to know one of the riders very well. So I felt pretty comfortable. But this was the first time she sat on him. So again, a little bit careful, but he did a great, did a great job, and he's been lunging and same kind of thing. Like he understands sort of what's going on during the week and that kind of thing. So same thing, slow and steady. Yeah. And that's important. There's no timeline on that per se, but today she had to get her saddle fitted. So she did have to get on him, but it was all good. So it was fun. We took some pictures and it's going to be fun to see her journey too. So maybe we'll have her come and catalog that as well. And you can let us know how your baby's doing. So.
Oh, well, he's not gonna do a whole lot. I mean, I'm not gonna, lunge him or anything like that. Just sort of, sometimes if they're being pretty good, I'll put a surcingle on, and not to lunge them, just to get the feel of something on their back. But basically, it's about routine, and being cross-eyed and being brushed and just like, here we're people, we're cool too.
You want to hang with us.
Yeah. Well, actually, there's a really funny is that he won't eat treats. So I've got treats in the arena. I have treats in the grooming stall, whenever available. And he's like, give him a sugar, and the other horses pretty much take your fingers off. And he's like, I don't like that. So then I just you pop it in the corner of their mouth so they can get a little taste and learn to, because I'm a big fan of bribery, in the horse training. So I like to bribe them, but you can't be bribed if they don't even know what a treat is. So you gotta introduce that a little bit.
Train them before you bribe them. I get that's like my niece and nephew. They're totally. I of course I'm an aunt. I bribe. They're totally bribable. Yeah. It's awesome. It's like, you want to go to get ice cream? Let's do this, and they do it great for me. It's fantastic.
Yeah, it works. It works pretty good.
My sister hates it, but I think it's fun. Well, that's awesome. Well, we hope everyone's doing well where you are. Obviously, the COVID restrictions in the U.S. are coming down again. So we kind of upped our protocol again this week. We've been being careful, but we kind of re-upped it a little bit. Our state requires masks now, and so we kind of re-upped it. So I hope everyone's staying safe where you are, and let's end this thing. Let's just end it like Canada. Let's be like Phil.
I wasn't personally responsible, but if I can take a little credit, I will. Yeah. We've been doing pretty good, but now it's open. Now we're opening up slowly and carefully. Now we're opening up. We're in phase 3, so we're just hope people are responsible and don't pretend like it doesn't exist. And
we're going negative. We're going back to anyways. But we hope everyone's being safe. We'll get through it, and again, kind of, we've been trying to be a fun community. I think it's actually week 12 of dressage rider training. If you've made it this far, congratulations.
We didn't.
Phil and I have been fallen soldiers.
I'm going to do the yoga. Yep.
I've been doing the yoga
Saturday as I get back going into it. I am going to get back going into it. And I think
I've been doing the yoga in the core. I had to be careful with the fitness because of my knee. So I've been almost done, but I didn't do the fitness part. But we hope you guys are doing well. And with that, and again, send us your stories on how it went. We enjoyed that. Nicola came on last week. So we hope you're enjoying that and the workout's going well. And we have, Phil, drum roll, our book club book, Brain Training for Riders. And we have the author Andrea Waldo on, and we hope you enjoy, and we're looking forward to this book. Well, as everybody knows, we have been really pushing up our book club during quarantine time, and we have a great one for you. We are so excited about this book, and we also have the author. So our book club book for this month is Brain Training for Riders, and Andrea Waldo is the author, and she is joining us. Welcome, Andrea.
Thanks for having me.
Well, we are thrilled because this is a book that is in print, but it is also an audio book, right? So we have lots of ways to get it. Well, I'm going to go audio, I think, because I love it when I'm kind of driving around. I love audiobooks now and podcasts and all the things. So Andrea, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Okay, so I had a very strange path to where I am. I'm a riding instructor. I'm a trainer. I own a farm in Ferrisburg, Vermont, with 2 other women. It's called Triple Combination Farm. And so we've owned that for about 14 years now. And I'm an event rider. Did my first advanced a few years ago. And I also, for about 18 years, was also a psychotherapist. And so those 2 things came together, and that's sort of how the book got created. I didn't start competing until I was in my 20s. I was a horse crazy kid, but didn't have access to a whole lot of stuff. Hadn't even really heard of eventing until I got into it. And so I got to ride a little bit when I was young, but mainly dove right into it when I got into graduate school. And it kind of kept me sane all through grad school. And then that evolved. My husband likes to joke that, my original goal was to take 1 lesson a week on a school horse, and look where we are now. But it was kind of crazy. But then along that whole trajectory, I was also doing therapy at the same time as working with primarily survivors of trauma of one type or another. I did a lot of work with teenage girls. I did a lot of work with adults. And doing a lot of work in the trauma recovery field. And what ended up happening was I started working with a lot of riders who were coming to me with anxiety issues, everything from fear about learning to canter to getting over a bad fall. And I started drawing on all the work that I was doing in my trauma therapy practice. And it sort of evolved into this program that I call Brain Training for Riders. The name of my business is Stressless Riding Equestrian Coaching. And it's so much fun. I love working with people on this stuff. It's amazing how people are able to, start from a place where they feel really frozen and really stuck, and just kind of work their way forward so that things start to get easier and they start to feel more confident, and they start to realize that they can do all the cool things that they wanted to do with their horses. So I closed my practice about 9 years ago now. So I'm not doing therapy anymore, but I still work with riders all the time. And it's been just something that I absolutely love to do in addition to my usual teaching. So it's been really cool.
That is awesome. I think, Reese and I and a lot of dressage trainers come to riders new to our sport because I don't know, I've heard it a lot, like, oh, well, I've decided to I was jumping in my 20s, or I was eventing in my 20s, and I've just, I had a bad fall, and I'd like to get back into riding, maybe 10 years after that. But I think I should just stick to dressage, and then so they're bringing that experience of a bad fall and probably, in a lot of cases caused them to stop riding. And then now they want to get going riding again. So we get a lot of riders with baggage, I would call it, or try and say it that way, if that makes sense. And,
yeah, absolutely.
And so as dressage trainers, we are having to help with the baggage along with riding lessons. So in some ways, we're becoming a bit of, therapists and riding instructors all the time. I think that's. I think jumping trainers and are universally, kind of that anyways. So I think if your book could help us bring some tools to that experience, that would be really incredible, really awesome, and help us as trainers, but help riders as well.
Yeah, well, and that's definitely part of what the impetus was to write the book. I had started to give some workshops, and a bunch of my friends who are trainers came up to me and were like, you have to write this down. Like, you need to write a book so that we can hand it to our students, because you've got a degree in this and we don't, and we can help, but we don't always know what to do and what to say. And there's a lot, I think in addition to people coming with baggage, there's also a lot of people starting out riding as adults now, which didn't happen, I think, as much, in earlier times. And that carries a whole level of difference too. So when you're learning as an adult, like, your body isn't developing sport-specific reflexes anymore the way it did when you were 9 years old. And you also just have this greater knowledge of the world as a pretty unsafe place where bad things can happen. And so you don't have that sort of bulletproof attitude that you did when you were a little kid. And so, when little kids learn to ride, they're falling off, they're getting back on, they're falling off, they're getting back on, and they don't think anything of it. When you're 35 and you have 2 children and a mortgage and a job to sustain, you're thinking falling off could be a really big deal and I can't afford to get hurt. And so that really changes how you approach it as a rider. And one of the things that I really focus on in the book is helping people understand how their brain works under stress and why we do what we do when we're stressed out. Because people come to me all the time, both in my lessons and in my coaching practice, and they're like, I know all the things I'm supposed to do. I know when my horse spooks, I'm supposed to sit back. I'm supposed to soften my arms. I'm not supposed to grab a hold of the reins and get tight in my knees, but I do it anyway. And so what I talk about is the whole fight or flight response that your body goes into when you feel threatened in some way, when you're scared by something. And the problem is the more primitive part of your brain that I refer to as the lizard brain takes over. And so that's your fight or flight response. That's the part of you that wants to either get out of there or fight whatever is threatening you. And it clenches up, rolls up into a ball. You breathe really fast, you get really tight. And then your thinking brain, your prefrontal cortex, your rational brain shuts off in the middle of that fight or flight response, which is why we can't think straight when we're nervous, because we literally don't have access to the part of our brain that does that. So people get really frustrated with themselves for not being able to remember what they know. But what I try to do is help them understand that it's not that you're stupid. It's not that you're a bad rider. It's that this is what our brains evolved to do for millions of years. And it's really hard to shut that off just because you want to sit on a horse.
Sure.
We evolved to, the reason your brain shuts off in those situations is because you don't have the luxury of logical, rational thought when you're being attacked by a saber-toothed tiger, which is how this stuff evolved. It evolved to protect us from those kind of threats. And so if you sat around thinking about it for too long, then you'd get eaten by the tiger and that's the end of it. And unfortunately, our brains haven't evolved a new mechanism for dealing with things like how to handle a spook or how to handle the stress of riding a dressage test. And I find when people stop giving themselves a hard time about why they're doing what they're doing, it kind of takes away a whole layer of stress. Like, no, it's really normal to feel this way and it's really normal to do that stuff. And so a lot of times I'm just sort of letting people know that what they're doing makes total sense based on how our brains developed.
Well, that, I can understand that because, as you coach someone and I've coached some really amazing people and very successful people, and they're doing like a training level test, for example, and they can do that test at home. We can go to a schooling show, but we take it to a recognized horse show, and it is like, you watch it and you're like, what is happening to this person?
Mm-hmm.
They just, or I see it too a lot when people are trying to get their medals, they're trying to get their 60%. So, and I'm like,
right.
I would not have sent you to the horse show if you can't do this. So it becomes a huge mental game. And then once I get that 60%, I always say like, oh, thank God, because then we can actually like train, we can, okay,
exactly.
Train. So, I mean, what are some strategies there? Because that is that's for me, like, it's just mind boggling sometimes when I want to be like, just, you got this, relax.
Show anxiety.
Absolutely.
Show anxiety.
Yeah. So one of the things that we forget a lot is that showing is a whole separate set of skills than riding. It's not the same thing. And so, because we've got the anxiety of performance, right? So we know we're being judged. We know we have skin in the game. We care about it a lot. We've spent a lot of money to do it. And so all of those pressures come in. And then you've got, you've got unpredictable situations. The footing's bad, the weather's bad. Somebody's horse is throwing a hissy fit in the warm up and getting your horse worked up. And those are all, dealing with all of those things is a really different skill set than our riding skills per se. And so I think one of the things that I always encourage people to do is like, if you've decided you want to show, you got to spend a whole season showing as much as you can to get through those situations and sort of get some experience. I think as professionals, a lot of times we might get nervous and we might care, we might be, a little bit anxious, but we don't have the same level of it because we do it a lot more. And we've done it a lot more with a lot more different horses than our students usually have. And so we forget that we sort of picked up these showing skills along the way. And again, if you did it as a kid, it tends to be easier as well. So a lot of it is being able to have a plan about how you're going to handle yourself under stress, and realizing that, like, okay, when I get there, it's going to be a lot different than when I ride this test at home. Like, what should I do in the warm up? What are my goals? If I'm getting tense, how can I handle that? I always bring people back to the absolute basics, which is, first of all, you got to breathe. And then you got to soften your elbows and soften your hips. And then you got to do the next right thing. Like, that's always what I tell people when their brain shuts down. Like, just pause, get yourself together, take a big breath, slow everything down, and then get softer and decide on one thing that you can do to make the situation better. Learning to stay present in the moment rather than getting distracted by thoughts about the score or thoughts about what you just did, the transition that you just blew. If you spend 4 strides thinking about that transition, you've just wasted 4 strides that you could have spent making the next movement better. Right.
Yeah.
And so practicing staying in the moment, and I actually have people practice things going wrong. So, like, I'll have somebody ride their test at home and I'll interrupt them in the middle. I'll blow the whistle and then go, "Oops, I'm sorry, you were fine. Carry on."
Yeah. Oh, that's a good idea.
And have them, and have them pick up where they left off. And have them, all get together in a group and ride in a really crowded space, and have one person be that person who's going to cut everybody off.
Yeah. Yeah.
And sort of simulate those situations as much as you can. And also just reminding people, like, it's about riding the moment that you're in. David O'Connor said one time in the clinic I was in, he said, "Ride the horse you have now, not the horse you had 2 seconds ago." And I was like, wow, that is a really good point. Like, you've got to ride every stride. And that means that you have to get rid of whatever just happened. One of the cheesiest but most effective tools I ever found was just, when something goes wrong, say delete. It's so stupid and so corny, and it completely works. It's just this really short thing that you can do to refocus yourself back in the moment. Just delete whatever just happened. Your brain knows exactly what it means because you do it a million times a day on your phone, and you don't have to think a whole bunch of thoughts. You just go delete and then put yourself back in the present moment. What do I do next?
I love that. That's fantastic.
I
wrote that down myself.
I thought it was the dumbest thing I'd ever heard. And I was like, that is so cheesy. There's no way in hell that's going to work. Right. And then I was walking my first intermediate cross country course, and I walked up to the biggest jump I'd ever seen. And I was like, if I miss my distance here, I'm so dead. Like, we're going to have a rotational fall. And then I was like, I can't go around with this thought in my head.
Delete. Yeah.
And I was like, all right, what have I got to lose? I'll try that stupid trick I heard the other day. And I was like, delete.
Yeah.
And I must have said,
don't put that in the universe.
Yeah, exactly. Right. And I must have said it like 30 times around the course as I was walking. And then I realized a couple minutes later, like, oh, I'm back on task. Like, I'm not thinking about that scary thought anymore. And so if you make a mistake, delete it. If you're getting distracted, delete whatever that thought was and get yourself back in the moment. I think when we watch any of the really amazing riders who are really good at showing, not just at riding, but really good at performing, they're so fast at recovering from their mistakes because they don't let themselves get distracted by it.
Well, and that they make mistakes, right? I think I mean, I had the pleasure actually of going to Aachen last year, and people make mistakes. Isabelle Vert, she's the greatest of all time. She makes mistakes. I think for me, that was like, I always put the pressure on myself. Like, I have to be perfect. And, you go to Aachen, this is the biggest show, biggest stage, and they're messing up their 2s. They're messing up their 1s. Like, they're missing the counts. Like, I mean, you build it up in your mind. Like, oh my God, they never make a mistake. I mean, there are times they never make a mistake, but there's times that they do too. And, so that you have to have a realistic expectation in the way.
Exactly. And I always remind dressage riders in particular that you're not striving for perfection. You're striving for excellence. Because there's no such thing as perfection. Perfection is a frozen moment. Yeah, perfection is a frozen moment in time, right? And then it's gone, poof. Then the next stride happens, and it's a whole new thing. And so perfection is not actually attainable, and it's not even desirable. 10 doesn't say perfect. 10 says excellent on your dressage test. And so trying to keep that in mind and and the other thing about sort of letting go of the perfection, and this actually maybe I'm sort of percolating this around as kind of my next book idea, is that, you know, if when you're perfectionistic, you can be A, too hard on your horse, and B, you can play to not to lose instead of playing to win. You know what I mean? So like, you can be too careful, and you can leave points on the table because you're not taking the risk of going for more brilliance or going for more flash, which is what elevates those scores once you get the basics down, right? And so, and absolutely, like, recognizing that everybody makes mistakes. I think it's a little easier in the event world to see that because there's, you know, I mean, everybody, all of us fall off at some time or another, at some fence or another. And it doesn't matter if you're Bruce Davidson or you're, you know, the little kid doing their first elementary level event, like everybody hits the ground at times. And we all have runouts at fences and that kind of thing. And I think when you watch people who are really, really good and you watch them make mistakes, there's that sense of security of like, oh, thank God they're human too.
Yeah, for sure. For sure.
Yeah. And so I always tell people, I'm like, you know, watch, and don't just watch like the gold medal round, like watch the other ones and watch how they got where they are. And, you know, go back and watch the old videos and notice that like, oh yeah, they kind of bounced around when they sat the trot for a while there too.
Yeah. No, it's so very really true.
Give you a little bit more of a sense of realism about the whole thing.
The other thing, sort of going back to fear, you know, I think so many people don't acknowledge fear, right? Like it's a real thing. Right. Like today I was working with someone about canter. Well, she had an accident, you know, on a different horse years ago, but you can tell she is afraid. Like she's very scared, and she's absolutely capable of cantering. She did it a couple days ago, but it's very difficult. So we haven't not had a chance to read the book yet, but are those strategies kind of talked about in the book, or can you tell us a little bit how to deal with those things?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, most of the book is sort of working your way through those scary experiences and figuring out ways to sort of make it work. So some of it is about challenging your thinking. So most things about fear start with the words, what if, right? You know, what if this happens? The problem is that we get stuck in the what if and we forget to answer the what if with a solution. So, you know, what if my horse takes off with me? Okay, well, first of all, how likely is that to happen? And second of all, what is the worst thing that could happen? What do you think might happen? And it's usually some version of, I'm going to fall off and break my neck and die. And then you have to go into, okay, so wait a second. What usually happens when you fall off? You know, and usually people get around to, you know, I hit the dirt, I swear a lot, I dust myself off, I get back on, I'm sore the next day. And sort of getting people back to a more realistic place about their more scary thoughts. And then also answering those fears with really concrete, tangible solutions. Like, okay, you're worried that your horse might take off. What are 3 things that you can do if that happens? You know, I can turn them in a tight circle. I can do a pulley rein, you know, those kinds of things so that people feel that they have strategies. Because that primitive part of your brain, your lizard brain, it creates that fear to try to keep you careful. You know, it's trying to protect you. And especially if you've had a scary experience, those experiences get burned in our brains literally on a neurological level more strongly than our positive experiences do, because our brain wants to make sure I'm not ever letting that happen again. I am going to remember that for the rest of my life to make sure I don't get myself in that position again. I always tell people, like, if you think about it from a primitive human's point of view, you know, it doesn't matter all that much that you liked the strawberry that you ate and that tasted good. You're going to remember the time that your friend ate the mushroom and then they didn't live to see it and they didn't live to tell about it. You're going to remember that mushroom, right?
Right. Sure.
And that's why that happens. That's why that gets burned into our brain so strongly. And so we have to address that. And so we have to come up with strategies to, like, okay, how do I solve the problem that I'm afraid of? And then teaching people strategies to lower their arousal level. So when your heart gets racing and when your breathing gets really fast and you can't think straight, you know, stopping and slowing down your breathing and, you know, letting your muscles soften for a few minutes and, you know, bringing down that intensity so that you can think clearly again and you can make better decisions and feel your way through the situation again. Right. And when it comes to accidents, I always point out to people that like, you know, we have really high expectations of ourselves as riders to get right back up off the ground, get our butts back in the saddle and do it again. Right. Like that's just part of our culture, is that we just keep going. The problem comes that when you get genuinely injured, or you get really, really scared because you could have been badly injured, that sticks around, and that's an actual psychological injury. Like your neurons in your brain literally get wired differently because of it. And it can be anything from just sort of garden variety fear all the way to post-traumatic stress disorder. And I always point out to people, like, if your horse bowed a tendon, you would not pull him out of the stall the next day and go, come on, buddy, let's go. You're going jumping today. You would never do that to your horse. You'd take the long, slow route of rehab and all that kind of stuff. But people don't always realize that psychological injury is like bowing a tendon. Like, you have to treat it as an injury, and you have to build yourself back up carefully. And so when people have a bad experience, then, you know, I take them through doing a little tiny bit at a time. You know, and for some people, that's literally just walking, you know, having somebody give them a pony ride. You know, when my business partner broke her neck a bunch of years ago, when she first got back in the saddle, we put her on the quietest horse in the barn, and I just led her around to make sure that she could, you know, that she was okay just doing that.
Sure.
And it really, and started building back up from that. And so, you know, when your student is learning to canter, like acknowledging, yeah, that was really scary what happened to you. And let's talk about how you can feel safer to do it again, to try it again, and it's okay to be scared. Like, it is completely normal, and it actually makes sense.
Right. No, I think that makes complete sense. And, I mean, my goodness, I mean, you're just fascinating, because I think we all deal with fear, and we all deal, you know, obviously that's part of Phil and I's job. And that's what we do here on the podcast. We try to give some strategies so that people can feel better and better. But you're absolutely right. It's a very real thing for people. And it's fascinating. So we could keep you online for hours, but Phil's going to tell us how we can get the audiobook, because we can also get a paperback as well of the book, right?
Yeah. Yes, that's right. Yep. You can get the paperback at horseandriderbooks.com, and it's also on Amazon and Barnes & Noble and all that great stuff. But Horse and Rider Books is a small publisher in Vermont. And at this time, I'm sort of really encouraging everybody to support small businesses. So it'd be great if you got it straight from them.
Absolutely. Yeah. And they're great supporters of us as well, for sure.
Yeah.
So Phil, fantastic. how can we get the audiobook?
So Trafalgar Square has partnered with an app called Glassbox. You can get all kinds of audiobooks on this app on your Android or iPhone device. And so if you go on horseandriderbooks.com, you can click to select, and they'll take you through the steps of getting it on audiobook version. So that's great.
Fantastic. Well, Andrea, how can we find you online if riders have more questions? Because I saw you have your own practice, and riders and trainers can get in touch with you. How do they do that?
Yeah, so you can go to stresslessriding.com, which is my website. And you can also find me on Facebook at Stressless Riding Equestrian Coaching. And on Instagram, I'm at Stressless Riding.
Fantastic.
Not on Twitter.
Not on Twitter. I hear you, girl.
Not on Twitter.
That's fantastic. Well, thank you so much for your insight. And we look forward to reading the book. I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, thanks so much for having me. It's been a lot of fun.
Well, we've got a quick break from Kentucky Performance Products, and hope you enjoy. And also, huge shout out to them, because we are using the Summer Games electrolytes like crazy down here. And Phil, I think you're the same. We're really appreciative.
We're in the summer, so
yeah.
Electrolytes for horses, electrolytes for people.
I wish they made an electrolytes for people, but they have great electrolytes for horses. And you can always find more information at Kentucky Performance Products.
She swallowed hard as they walked into the start box. She could feel his muscles tense under her leg. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Have a great ride. She didn't have to ask. He galloped out of the box and across the field toward their first training level course. His ears pricked. Her heart pounded. He attacked each obstacle with confidence, clearing them with room to spare. A huge smile broke out on her face as she crossed through the finish flags. She leaned forward and buried her face in his neck. Their bond of love and trust blocked out all else. This love story is brought to you by Elevate. Research proven to have superior bioavailability. Elevate supplies the essential vitamin E often missing from the equine diet. Its all-natural formula supports healthy muscle and nerve functions. The horse that matters to you matters to Kentucky Performance Products. Call 859-873-2974 or visit kppusa.com to order today.
Well, we've got a great segment from Meghan Brady about body work and explaining body work, and we hope you enjoy the segment. Well, tonight, I am so happy to have Meghan Brady back on the show. She's going to talk to us. This is actually how I met Meghan, was she is an amazing body worker. So Meghan, welcome to the show. And we wanted to talk about body work today.
Yeah, thank you for having me back. I appreciate it.
We're really looking forward to it. And we wanted to talk about, what is body work? How can, can you start us 101 and take it from there?
Sure. So the term body work is really interesting. People always ask, what's the difference between body work and massage? So think of body work as the big umbrella, and then you have these little, you have massage under there, you have acupressure under there, you have Reiki, you have myofascial release, you have sports massage, you have all these other modalities in that. So body work is just a general term for all of those things. And so when you meet somebody, they say they're a body worker, they may have one or, 10 different modalities that they use. So that's a little bit of a breakdown, because a lot of people ask me, what's the difference between a massage therapist and a body worker? And I'm always like, well, a massage therapist is a body worker, and a body worker can be a massage therapist, but they may not be. So that's a little bit of the terminology used in terms of whether that's human or horse, actually. So it's a little one-on-one on the difference of what defines body work. Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah, I didn't know that. That's
Me either.
Great. Perfect definition.
Absolutely. Yeah. So talk to us if you're trying to find a body worker, you know what I mean? If you're like, okay, I have a horse that I really want to work with someone, kind of talk to us about, I don't even know what certifications are out there. How does that work?
So it's very interesting. Every state is different. And so, for myself, I decided that because, each state is different and it's not regulated state by state or actually nationwide. State by state has their own different rules. And if you want to become a body worker, you kind of need to know what they are. Some, require that you work under a vet. Some require, that mostly that actually. And so it's really done state by state. And then there is the state of Washington is actually the only state in the United States that requires you to have go through a certain protocol in their state and get a certification through an association. But every other state is a little bit different. So that was a little bit why I chose to go through human massage first, because there is, I took it in the state of Florida, and I'm also licensed in other states, but the state of Florida is actually the strictest state in the United States, along with New York. And so you sit for a board like you would nurse, doctor, lawyer, same thing. And so I felt that gave me personally and my education more clout. And then I went on to different equine certifications. So if people really want to get into body work, I encourage them to really do their research on all the different schools out there, because there is a lot out there here in the United States and abroad. And some of them offer a very thorough education, and that I can recommend. And there's others that, I would say you probably need a little bit more education if you're going to go out in the field. So as a person, that if you're a trainer or a horse owner and you're like, hey, I need a body worker, I always say talk to people that in your area, see who's in your area, and, ask them. Don't be afraid to ask them, what are they educated in? What modalities do they do?
Where did they get their education? And then obviously watch them work. That's huge. Watch them work on the horses, how they interact and what they're doing and why, and ask them questions. I mean, ask them as many questions as you can, because that's super important. And then, the body worker should be able to, talk to you about what's going on with your animal and things that you can do, in between sessions and things like that. There's so many schools out there. And so I can't really, promote one or the other, because, they all serve a purpose, and some of them, like I said, are really great programs. But if you want to be a body worker, just know that it's going to take time, and to constantly educate yourself, constantly take continuing education. And, I encourage people to, shadow other professionals when they start out.
Yeah, no, I think that's such great advice in anything in the horse world and in a lot of other fields. Yeah, it's really true. So talk to me about how sort of your body worker can work as a team with your farrier and your vet. Like how do you work that all together?
Sure. And I promote the team approach so much with my clients. I want to know who their vets are. I want to know who their farriers are. I want to meet them. I want to have conversations with them. I want to know who their trainers are. I need I need that information, because, each of us comes to the table looking at something different. Reese, you're going to come to the table looking at from a trainer's standpoint, and I'm coming to the table looking at from a bodywork standpoint. And then your farrier is looking, solely at, his perspective, and we all can bring something to the table. And, maybe I'm missing something because I'm not looking at it from a perspective of somebody else, and vice versa. And I, even for, I always say, like, I get other body workers to work on my own horse because I might be missing something because I'm so close to the situation. And so I just encourage there to be always open communication between all the people involved with that animal. This is a team approach. Anything from grooms to barn managers to trainers to farriers to chiropractors to and body workers, massage therapists, or, anybody who's involved. Everyone who has kind of hands-on with that animal can give you a piece of information. I think that is so important. During the season down here in Florida, so many people, I talk to the grooms. They know so much about the animal because they're with them so much. And, they can tell me, oh yeah, like, this horse recently started doing XYZ, and that's really good information for me to know. Also, a farrier, I have farriers contact me all the time that I work on their horses, and they say, hey, Meghan, just by the way, this week when I went to shod this horse, he had some problems, like really, I had issues. He really did not want to pick up his left hind, and he struggled with that. I think there's something going on in that. And so it's just about open communication. And really, we're all here to serve the horse and do the best thing for these equine athletes. And I think we kind of have to put our egos aside and work as a team constantly and just keep that communication open at all the time.
Now, Meghan, can you think of any example? I know I'm kind of putting you on the spot, but can you think of any examples that this has worked out really well and for the benefit, of the horse and of the riding and the training, having this team approach?
Absolutely. I have a client. It was a new client to me about 2 years ago, and I was at the training barn, and we just I had a powwow basically with the farrier. Actually happened to be there. The farrier was there, the trainer was there, the owner was there, and I was there. And it just kind of so happened we all were there at the same time. And this horse really struggled getting his feet done. Like, had to be sedated, was really uncomfortable. The whole 9 yards. And, unfortunately, because he was so uncomfortable, it became an unsafe situation. So I ended up working on the horse, for about an hour. And then He just went off and, we went off on our day and had a discussion. And what we learned over time, just having open dialogue, I would work on the horse. We plan it that I work on the horse the day the farrier comes because he doesn't need to be sedated then. And so I think that's a really we kind of, put our heads together and to figure out these puzzle pieces. And here, he just holds tension in his body. He's a very, he kind of internalizes, he is just kind of that animal. But if he can release that muscle tension and kind of get into, for lack of a better word, a Zen state, he is not stressed out during his getting shod, and he can stand there quietly and not be sedated. And I know that, there's a lot of situations out there that are, like that, where horses, just need a little help in that. So that's one situation that I thought was really, if we never talked, we would have never figured that out ever. If I never talked to the farrier and figured that out, because under saddle, there was no issues. So it was just for whatever reason, and it could have been mentally. We don't, that it could have been, he could have had a bad experience at some point in his life, unfortunately. But for whatever reason, through our communication, we were able to, come up with a solution for him to make it a much more comfortable situation and pleasant for everyone around.
And safer and all the things. So I think that's
all the things. Amazing. And I can name several different other situations where the trainer is feeling something in training, and the vet comes out and they don't see anything, or there's nothing that can be diagnosed. But then maybe I can put my hands on the horse and say, he's just really something's, maybe going on in his right shoulder, and we need to look at this a little bit more, or, there's too much tension here for what he's doing in his career right now. It could be simple things like that.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I love it. Well, I think, again, sometimes it takes a little time to coordinate, but we're all into this for the horse and to make the horses better, and to hear how you can really do that it's truly amazing. So, well, Meghan, we can't thank you enough for all your time tonight. Can you give us some, how can we find you online?
Sure. So my business is Equine Solutions. You can find myequinesolutions.com is my website, and then My Equine Solution on Facebook and on Instagram. Those are where you can contact me. And I do travel all over the country, basically, at this point. So if you're interested or just want to learn more about becoming a body worker, feel free to call me. I'm happy to chat.
Fantastic. Well, thanks so much, Meghan. And I look forward to seeing you soon. It may not be till Florida next year, but I can't wait to see you.
I know, right? Likewise. Stay safe.
As everybody knows, we are huge fans of Total Saddle Fit, and we use all of their products. We use the girths, we use the stability stirrup leathers, which we love. And Phil, you pulled out something this week that we don't talk about that often, but it's fantastic.
Yeah, so Total Saddle Fit makes a shimmable sheepskin pad, which comes in very handy. And this is the reason I pulled it out when you have a horse with a bit of a changing back. Yep. So I'm riding a 5-year-old, and that can be an age which the horse is developing, and he's getting muscle over his top line. He's learning all about that. But I sort of pulled the saddle out and said, I don't think this is really working at the moment. Let me take a look. So there was a bit of bridging happening, in the panel, and I just said, you know what? Let me just shim this up a little bit and see if it, in my opinion, works a little bit better. And then I can call the saddler out, and because you can call the saddler and they're not going to come for who knows how many weeks, especially in the summer when they're so busy. So that's it. And I'm so thankful that I have that to help fit the saddle a little bit better in the meantime before getting the saddler out to really, do the proper adjustments and the flocking in the saddle. And it's been such a great product to sort of, I call it bridging the gap. If you're, with young horses, especially the 3-year-olds, as you start them and they change so fast, every 3 months, I think realistically, you're not going to get a saddle refit every 3 months. So If you have a shimmable pad, which, Total Saddle Fit makes an awesome shimmable pad, and you can actually send pictures of your horse's back, and you can get recommended pictures of your saddle, and you can send that to Justin at Total Saddle Fit, just care@totalsaddlefit.com, and he will give you advice. He'll, maybe you put the shims in here and there, and through that I've sort of learned that process of, I think this needs to be shimmed here, and I'm obviously not a saddler, but I've, you kind of learn enough through tips and tricks and to make it work for the meantime. So really, really appreciate that product that's come in handy on so many horses.
It's fantastic. Well, as always, we love Total Saddle Fit, and we appreciate all their help with our show. And we are going to come back. We've got a great tip of the week that you and I just did. Well, Phil, I've got a topic this week for our Total Saddle Fit tip of the week.
I'm excited to hear it. You let me know what you got.
Okay. All right. So this has happened. There's a couple students in my life right now who have purchased Schoolmasters. And very, very lucky, and they love their horses, and they're so, so very excited about purchasing Schoolmasters. And I just wanted to talk a little bit about what that means. I think a lot of people purchase some really, really nice horses, and they're able to do that. And this particular rider is very, very, very good, and she works very, very, very hard, but she's never had a horse like this. So it really brings some challenges to, she wants to show, and she wants to go out, and she wants to do, but it's hard. It's kind of like, buying a Ferrari, and just because you know how to drive a car doesn't necessarily I can't drive a Ferrari. I'd love to learn, but you'd have to learn, right? And there's some level of that. So I just wanted to talk about that because I don't think we've ever kind of talked about that subject. So why don't you kind of start us off on your thoughts and what you've worked with your students?
I mean, to be able to have the opportunity to purchase or lease or ride a horse that's trained to a much higher level than your own riding is a fantastic experience. I, recommend it for everyone. I think a larger issue is that these horses are not really available in North America. In Germany and Holland and Europe, at your local schooling stable, they have a variety of really well-trained, usually older horses that aren't ready to retire, but are done in the show world, and they're sent on to teach younger kids or more beginner riders, or even intermediate riders, the basics around dressage. But I think the focus here is the basics of dressage. They're really good. They got lots of buttons. They can do lots of tricks. But what they're really meant for and really makes them special is that you can learn how to do lengthened trot. Not even an extended trot, just how to do a proper lengthened trot. I mean, these experiences are invaluable to learn really well how to do first and second level. I think the misconception is that you buy a Schoolmaster that might be trained to the FEI levels, Prix St. George to Grand Prix, and then now I can ride Prix St. George to Grand Prix. And that's really not how it works. And it's not fair on the horse either.
That's
because
true.
You're not a Prix St. George rider. So just because the horse knows how to do it doesn't mean that you're in tune enough or balanced enough or strong enough to be able to ride all of those movements and ride those tests and go out in 3 months and show Prix St. George.
Yeah.
So I think this is what you're talking about a little bit in your experiences. And it's nothing to say that they're bad riders and that but no one can just hop on and just do unless you've experienced before. And you have to, any horse that you ride, you have to start from the beginning, solidify the basics, and move your way up.
Yeah. You really have to kind of walk before you run. You have to do literally work your way up the scale. Start at
Doesn't
training.
Matter how high the horse is trained.
That's right.
You have to, first of all, it's a year before you're in sync with the horse. You know each other really well. There's a lot of trust going on. You've worked with the horse a year. That's 5 days of riding, not 1 or 2, and your trainer rides it the rest. So, you got to put the time in the tack to just figure it all out, temper your expectations, and then, maybe do a second level test a year from purchasing a Priest and George horse.
Yeah.
There's no substitute for time. There's no substitute for just learning how to really get balance, get the basics, get the communication down. And then if you are a good rider, you might be able to just, go next year, third level, next year, fourth level, next year, Priest and George. Great. But you don't get to skip all the intermediate steps just because, you spend a lot of money and the horse knows what he's doing. It's a lot of effort. There is a lot of effort. And then I have to say, then once you get your schoolmaster up there, you say, okay, well, this is what it feels like. And, you basically, you can get some good scores and go to the shows. And then your next horse that you bring along, maybe you get another schoolmaster. Then maybe you can hop Priest and George to Priest and George.
Yeah.
In a year. Right. But you got to know it. You got to know it first, because you're wandering around in the dark with a flashlight where the horse knows the test or not. So
no,
a lot of time, and there's no substitute for good eyes on the ground and good training, and there's no substitute for good practice.
Good practice. I think that's critical, right? It's okay to practice. Like, practice is great. We all need to practice. But if you're practicing the wrong things, then, the horses can get sore, or they get fussy because they're like, wait a minute, this isn't what I'm used to having. I'm not used to this.
Or you just get really good at doing it badly.
Yeah, or get really good at doing it badly.
Yeah, I think. Who did we hear that from in the trainer symposium earlier this year? That was this. Who said that?
It was. I can't. There were 4 instructors at that one, and I can't remember who's. Did Ashley Holster say that?
Ashley, yeah, it was Ashley. Yeah. She's like, don't get good at doing things badly.
Yeah.
That's where a weekly trainer steps in, or if you can do two lessons.
I was going to say, when you get a horse like that and you're just learning how to ride it, you pretty much need a trainer. If you can do it as much as you can do it, ideally every day for a while, until you really understand. Because if the horse and the trainer know, and then you really have to listen to the trainer and listen to what they're telling you and why they're telling you that. Because again, the horse knows. And it's tough. I mean, it's such a hard thing, because you think, oh, I can do this. I'm a good rider and I bought a good horse and I should be able to go out and do that. And it's just not the way of the world.
Yeah. I mean, even professionals, you start on a horse, but you gotta take your time, figure out where the buttons are, find the right rhythms, rhythm and tempo, know what to expect. It's really, really hard. It's because the horse is going to be coming from a different rider, a different trainer, and they're going to come into the situation like, oh, I don't know what's going on, or, a little, even if they're super quiet and hopefully they're really good. It's just everybody trains a little bit differently, and they apply their aids a little bit differently, and it's a big adjustment for a horse. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And it's a huge adjustment for a rider. So
yeah, it is. So be easy on yourself, but no, if you do go purchasing the schoolmaster, which is amazing if you have the opportunity, and that is how you learn to ride. That's how Phil and I learned to ride. Like, that's how you do it. Then you do have to be patient, and you have to know it's going to take time. It's not going to happen overnight as much as you want it to happen overnight. It doesn't happen like that for anybody. So I think those are some such good points. And I do wish that we had more horses like Europe in your local riding school. We don't even really have local riding schools.
We don't have local riding schools, first of all. So there you go.
Number one.
If we did, we would fill them with horses with a ton of experience, whether it's in dressage or show jumping or eventing, a little bit of everything. I mean, eventing, I think that's a world that you absolutely need a schooled horse for safety reasons. For us, it's not necessarily safety reasons, but you have to feel for the horse who's, where this rider is gung ho and ready to go and ready to conquer the world, and the horse is just like, well, I just want to do what I was doing before, and their life changes so much. It's just, it's very hard. It's very hard, and there is not an expectation from your trainer or
exactly.
anybody that like, oh, we're gonna get this lickety split, and the bonus is that that you have a chance to get it right once in a while and really get a feel for what's good.
Well, I love it, Phil. I think that's a great discussion on this topic. And it's a good way. And hopefully it's a journey and you enjoy the journey with your new horse. So I love it. Thanks, Phil. That was great. Well, as always, we love email and Facebook shout outs. We love them. We've really enjoyed the workout ones. Those have really made us laugh and we appreciate them. So as always, keep them coming. Questions, anything we can do to keep you guys entertained, we would love to do it. And as always, you can find our show notes and links to today's guests on our website, dressageradio.com. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
I think the best way to reach me is through Facebook or my email, philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors for allowing us to put on a show. And don't forget to check out all the other shows on the Horse Radio Network at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down, your shoulders back, your masks on, and stay safe and well. And we will talk to you next week.